If anyone missed my video about Season 1, there's a hint for you in the upper right corner, but we're on to Season 2, which is all about underground arena fighting. Such shit decides to hold a tournament, which will bring the greatest fighters from all over the world to compete for the title of the strongest and for the belt worth tens of millions of yen. A total of 32 main participants and 4 reserve fighters will be divided into 4 blocks and the winners of their groups will meet in the semifinals. There will be a lot of fights, but I can't show every single one of them, so we will only look at the fights of the important characters in the story, and we will skip the passable fighters. On this tournament, Blocks decides to invite to the review of his first opponent will be Regan Wrestler, possessing tremendous strength for which he constantly had to hold back during his fights. But Baki defeated him without much difficulty. After his victory, he is congratulated by his father and asked why he is doing this. After all, in her opinion, they just cripple each other, to which Baki replies that every man at least once wanted to become the strongest. Many after a while give up this dream, but Baki let in stupidly wants to achieve his own, no matter what. The next fight in one block will be between the kickboxing champion and the most charismatic Japanese wrestler. Igor started to make a show out of the fight to the audience to support him, and after a couple of throws he wins. Now we will move on to the second block, in which will perform to Father Miorochi adopted son Doppo. He is called the perfect karate player who has perfected karate. When he was only 5 years old, he performed in a circus where he was just noticed by Doppa. After one of the performances broke free, a lion killed his father, but the 5-year-old was able to subdue him, after which the Doppa decides to adopt the boy to raise and train him as his own son. A fighter who must fight against Akeda in round 1 did not come to the ring, so he will be opposed by one of the 4 alternates. Namely Discount Azara, who came here to find and avenge an UJA for his murdered father, as the force between them turned out to be too great with the monster to decide. Reduced to the sum he first with ease it turns him on, and then is going to kill. But the monsters from death saved Baki, who attacked Orochi. They were going to fight, but the Kata stopped them, saying that if they win their fights, they can find out their relationship in the finals. Next to fight is Hayama, who will defend the honor of street fighters Baki would like to welcome and support. But the mafia boss replied that they are having a war. There Pit will confront all the fighters who practice martial arts. His opponents would be Ingi, representatives of Japanese martial arts. He was able to strike them with his legs and even blocked his attack, but it was so strong that through the block broke his leg, and when he tried to twist his arm he broke his spine. After defeating him decide to fight Coach and Legs to defend the honor of martial arts. But instead of fighting, Hanama decides to check on his opponent and try to help him come to his senses. The next fight will be between the people of Gustav and the costumer Ochi. Roland sees through his opponents and is able to twist any joint. That's exactly what he did to Orochi's right arm, but he ruled it back in one move. This means that Roland's main weapon is useless against him. Roland tried to use the same technique against the thief as Baki did in Season 1 against the mower, but the difference in strength was too great, so Orochi just beat him. Obviously, users could not miss such an event, but by agreement such a Gava he was forbidden to fight, so he came just to watch the fight. Eugene recommends such a Gavi add to the participants another fighter Amana EU, whose strength lies in love. Knowing what an opponent wants, he also understands what that opponent wants the least and what kind of punches he can't expect to land next. Silva, a master of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Jack Hammer of Canadian Betfair will fight in a 3-fight block. Before the fight, Jack meets to review. He says that her boyfriend Baki is a fine young man, but when Baki himself comes to them, he immediately gets up a fighting stance, ready to fight, but Jack was not going to fight him, but only said that he wanted to look at him. In the finals of the tournament, Baki himself was surprised at how exactly he reacted to Jack. Turns out it's because he's afraid of him. During the fight, it turned out that the difference in strength between Jack and Silva was so great that Jack took him down with just one punch. Some people would think that Jack achieved such strength with just training, but in fact doping played a big role in his success. Jack was a frail guy, but he spent 12 o'clock in the gym, boxing a punching bag, without taking breaks to eat or go to the bathroom. But even such workouts weren't giving him the body he wanted, and that's when he turned to science. A scientist who had once seen the Ujas take on a polar bear with their bare hands wanted to create a drug that could make a man as monstrous as Eugene. But the problem was that his experiments were unsuccessful and there was a risk that his drug would be fatal to humans. However, this did not stop Jack, and he began to take doping, diluted 10 times. With its help he easily broke all the records, but it was not enough for him. He told the scientist to give him the undiluted version, even though it might kill him. That's why they called him the man who gave up the future. And because of the fact that the scientist created a monster, he decides to kill himself before each fight. Jack takes doping, which each time reduces this year of life. After the victory over the Silva with Jack decides to fight with the user himself. But the books interfere dogs, saying that Jack has no right to fight the plot. His father gives Baki a normal spanking to keep him out of the way. But even after that, Jack refuses to fight him. He whispered something in his ear and walked away. This made the user very happy, and he said that Jack Ron has the same right to fight him as Baki. And why they are equal, we will learn a little later. then would occur in the 4th block. Between themselves will face Deceptions, who got here on the recommendation of the user, and Knight Momoda Yamatai began to float in the air and kick to beat his opponent. A man whose strength lies in love. His opponent is being beaten with unbelievable brutality. So much so that the fight had to be stopped by the judges. After them will be beaten to the Pope and Chicago bouncer Richard Field. Both fighters came out in suits, and let Richard was very much dop. All the same owns karate, and therefore was able to put his fingers such a blow, from which Richard was knocked out. But after the victory longed to help his opponent come to his senses and thanked for the fight. The next fighter, which is worth talking about, is an old man perfect, owns Aikido. Many fighters had no idea what he was doing here, because compared to the others he looks like a child. But in the first fight, to which the opponent was a meter wrestler, he showed what he is capable of, while not straining at all. Then already in the 2nd block we'll meet Tsunami and Hanayama, which from the very beginning seized the initiative and could very quickly end the fight, but did not seek his opponent, and even gave until he becomes on his feet. This happened more than once, because of which Ring still managed to come to his senses and begin to respond to the Yami with dignity. He used his solar plexus to push off and kick. Such a kick is very hard to execute, which once again shows his skill, then and strikes 4 strikes on the center line, but at this point his leg is caught. Sayama and tears his joints, however Sume bandaged his leg and continued the fight. Hana Pit was almost defeated, but this is the excuse not Sumi's such motivation, after which he decided to deliver his crowning supersonic strike. To my father I was left to deliver the decisive blow, and Hanayama decided to take it with his back, which had a tattoo dedicated to the man who saved his mouth. Let to father did not win, but he was carried out of the ring by 2 men, and to his father he said that Hatoyama was able to knock him out at least 3 times. Jack and Masaki Ganga, who wields a traditional Shaolin comp, enter the ring next. He started to hit Jack with up to 20 punches per second, but for some reason at some point his arm got bloody. The master began to strike again with his legs, but again after that his limb began to bleed. A limb. They decided to stop the fight and search Jack, because it seemed that he was carrying a weapon, but Jack had nothing on him. Masaki dressed the wounds and continued the fight, even though the blood loss was making him dizzy and he was going to pass out soon. As it turned out, these wounds Jack inflicted on him with the help of his teeth. He bit the master, so that he broke his arm, after which Jack without much trouble knocked out the opponent's teeth and passed to the next stage. From such a performance Skin began to feel very worried about Baki. She begged him to quit this tournament, to which Baki took her to the grave of his mother. He told her the story of her death and added that because of this, he must by all means become stronger than his father and avenge his mother's murder. That's why he wants to win this tournament so badly. Then into the ring come Compliment and Deception, who, as in one of his fights, begins to soar over his opponent. But before Pablo is ready for it, and so began to be his opponent, and let it seem that Dopa is obliged to win, somehow not his son, not others. Watching could not imagine him as a winner, and Mona after many injuries, as if on autopilot began to attack Dopa, and very successfully he led him to a takedown, during which broke his knee. But even after this Dope was going to continue the fight, not wanting to kill his opponent, Amandoy began to beg first Dope, and then such a chapter to recognize him as the winner, because otherwise he would be forced to kill Dope to change his mind. Dopa was going to give him a blow to the eyes, but did not have time to do it, because the deceitful attacked the user, because he considered him a yellow weakling, because he did not want to kill a man. As Eugene spoiled the fight, he decided to redeem himself with a small show. He asked such a head to take out against him all the fighters who passed to the next stage, but instead of them came the losers. Obviously, they couldn't stand up to him. And Yusser defeated his opponents in their own style. Boxing champion he removed under the rules of boxing. The same was with the humorist and other losers. When against the budget remained one Kurahin, for him to decide to stand up to the wasp and already closed, stand up for the remaining fighters. Eugen decides to kill them, but then it flies into him in the bullet. Fucking I caught an olive. Then he is caught in a net and put to sleep with darts with sleeping pills, the dose of which would be enough to put a whale to sleep. And the winner in the pair of Dopu and Anaya decided to do it because the judges considered the last blow to the eyes decisive. Even for Eugene, he could not make it. After this performance must fight Kusei and Gorky, because during the bosses and brother XYU held back, he could not show all his techniques and so decided to demonstrate on the old man at the cost of a broken arm. Kostya races such a blow, from which the thin bone behind the eye of the eye bottom was broken, but it turns out that this particular eye corner was not real, so the old man was still able to defeat Kostya and pass to the next stage, to which also reached these fighters in round 1. Bucky among the game, who before the fight tearfully begged him to give up and give the victory, because the victory in this tournament is his dream, but Bucky said that he has exactly the same goal. So he would fight at full strength. During the fight Igor started throwing punches that Bucky didn't even feel, but it turned out to be a bluff. And when Bucky thought that he had already defeated Igor, he kicked him in the groin. The whole fight he acted dirty, and at one point he looked at his mistress, who was dressed exactly the same, Lil Abaca. He realized it wasn't her, but he still lost his concentration, which Igor took advantage of. When he took Baki in his crowning move, he got out of it quietly, because between a wrestler and a fighter like Baki there is a huge difference in stretch. So a takedown, which for the rankings is considered incredible for Baki, is a simple warm-up move. Imperial through himself, Baki wins after the fight. Igor comes to him. He thanks Baki, as this would be the best fight he has had in his 20-year career and he enjoyed it very much. The next fight will be between Capsules and Covers and Father Kung Fu Master. The name KO is only worn by the strongest. At one time the project was considered a bad student and for his fiery temper. Once during a fight he killed a student, but he did not feel any guilt. And even though the then didn't want to pass this name to the Rezu, he had to do it because the Rezu was recommended by such a person who couldn't be refused during their fight. Father did not get up his perfect stance, and let not be considered a true art from the world of karate. Ritu said that the level at which karate is now, was reached kung fu even 2,000 years ago, and he proved it with just one non-contact strike. The difference in strength between the two proved to be too great, so Tahir easily passed on. Then into the ring come Gorky and Dopu in this battle of the masters. Eventually Gorky prevails, although during the fight Gorky for the first time really felt fear. He was afraid of Dopu with all his heart, and therefore after his victory expressed his respect for him. But Kogagan was heading down the podium before his rival appeared to him. So that he struck a killing blow, but respect for the race feels more than hatred, and therefore did not kill his opponent. And after Dopa lost the race, and his son lost, Caillou Dopa decides to close his karate school. Because if he is not able to become the strongest, then he simply cannot train others for the sake of it. And so, in the finals, these are the fighters who will meet. At this point, Uja comes to his senses and goes to his father. He teases the Kung Fu master and advises him not to look down on Baki, because in his veins runs the blood of the Hamas. When the turn to fight comes to Baki Arisu, it turns out that Baki before the fight has already fought with him 1,000 times. He did it by imagining strikes. It is called a fight with the shadow, and thus, having watched all the fights of the cutter, Baki memorized all his techniques, and therefore was able to fight with him mentally. Just like that. Thus, Baki have received all these injuries, but only these fights did not end in anything. Neither Baki nor the shadow could not gain the upper hand, and all because he really has not yet shown all that is capable. How he struck Baki such a blow, from which he flew all over the ring, but at the same time Baki did not get much damage, and therefore asked the edge not to hold back and show everything that he can. Kung Fu Master Risam gave Baki the strongest blows, from which he lost consciousness for a while. But it turned out that such strong wounds, at which there is a threat to life in Baki, wakes up the power of Hama. He stands in Uja and catches the opponent's grab, then begins to wash his neck, and then delivers a decisive blow. Baki won, but there was complete silence in the arena because no one expected such brutality. But luckily for Rezu, nothing, except a bruise. He didn't get anything. After the fight to Baki comes the user and scolds for the fact that he regretted and did not kill his opponent. 2 semifinal will be a fight between Gorky and Jack. On before the start many masters could not hold him, as if he refused to enter the arena, raising that, most likely, now will be the most difficult fight in his life. Gothic waltzes up to the arena where the fight begins, but instead of fighting normally, Jack once again just tries to bite his opponent. First he bites his ankle, and then bites his hand, to which Race responds with a throw. He then kneels down and prepares to defend himself. The whole strength of the master is that he turns the opponent's blow against himself, and the harder the opponent hits, the stronger the master's response will be. But this technique has a weakness. If the opponent will not attack, the master will have nothing to answer him. Jack takes advantage of this and once again bites the slides, after which he reaches the old man with his foot. After the fight to Jack comes Kurahin. He said that because of doping Jack's body begins to break down, and if he does not refuse the final, he risks dying, because his body will be able to withstand only one fight. But Jack does not care about this, so he just leaves him, and thus to the final reach Baki and Jack before the fight of the user, and Jack agree that if Jack wins this tournament, then right after that he can fight the storyline. When the fighters enter the ring, it turns out that Hannah is Jack's real last name, which means that they are half-brothers. That's also why Uja then stated that Jack has the same right to fight the Juicer before the fight, instead of having some kind of hatred. And vice versa, they show mutual respect. This fight will be between half-brothers whose father ruined their mother's lives, for which they both set a lifelong goal. To surpass Eugene, they began to fight at incredible speeds, with sweat and tears spilling out of them all over the arena. But it turned out that this fast-punching carnage was a warm-up, and only now would Jack and Baki begin to fight at full strength. Like a lion, Jack would attack Baki, trying to bite him, but when the fighter opens his mouth, his jaw is his most vulnerable spot. So Baki was able to retake the initiative, but when he grabs him in the same clinch he once held against his father. Jack has a burst of strength, and easily throws off the tanks, and then with tears in his eyes says that he just cannot give the tank victory because of what the user was forced to go through his mother, and then begins to furiously attack the tanks. But Baker is just as motivated, and he also understands how Jack feels. He gives Jack the hardest blows, after which he is about to throw his brother over himself, but Jack is held up by his teeth and then starts attacking Baki with his bites, and when he fails to bite him, it turns out that with his bite he has nicked an artery and given the bitch a badly bleeding hand to unconsciousness and maybe death. Baki has about 3 minutes left, but despite that, he continues to fight. However, Jack's punches prove to be stronger and he knocks him down. Jack tries to finish his brother, but Baki counterattacks and makes a takedown. But when the latter once again tried to bite him, Baki severed his eye nerve with a bone-crushing hold. He delivered severe blows that look to his father's mind, then breaks his arm with an Agoryev hold. Because of the loss of blood, Baki has about seconds left, but then Jack's body begins to break. However, according to him, it is only better, and this form is perfect. Just in it he was going to fight the user. Jack strikes a blow that breaks Lesson's hand, then begin with incredible force to beat him, and all that Baki remains is to endure the blows of his older brother. Jack one after another struck Baki blows until he did not notice how the back of Baki turned into the devil the very same, which is also on the back of the user. Baki counterattacks and says that now he will spend in the last reception, after which Baki will definitely fall, and if Jack will remain standing, when he brings him, the victory will go to him. Baki begins to strangle him, and let him resist to the end. The body of such cannot withstand, and Jack loses consciousness, which means the victory of Baki in this fight and in the tournament as a whole. Zyuganov brings a belt with a price of tens of millions of yen, but Baki does not have the strength to lift it, so he is helped by Jack, who wakes up and congratulates his brother and helps him to lift the belt. After the defeat, Jack goes to yesterday, but he starts beating him up for daring to come to him. After losing to Baki, however, Jack still attacks his father, for which Eugene beats him to a pulp. The tournament was over and Baki won. He thought that's the end of it, but he still wants to fight. But what happens next? You and I will find out in the Season 3 video, which will be sometime tomorrow. Don't forget to write in the comments what are you thinking about this anime, but we'll see you in the next video.